All right, lock and load, you guys.
Let's do it.
You got notes?
Oh, come on.
Oh, God,
I'm talking to the greatest living director. I gotta
No,
come
but you see,
prepared.
you're supposed to be talking.
Yeah, well, I also have some anecdotes about the weather. In case.
Excellent.
All right.
Hey, come on, everybody, move on out. I feel, whenever I'm on a set, I'm start yelling. I'm not directing this.
You could direct it. Let's get a crane. Let's get a push it down.
Boom. First time I saw him was in a Lucas film, Call Me By Your Name.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm a great admirer of Luca, and I love the picture. I always talk about performances, but they aren't really, they're like behavioral, where you don't see the acting. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I connected there, and I saw Dune, which I enjoyed, and I started to see a sense of rage, And then they said, Chanel asked me to do this spot for Bleu.
Which you had already done.
I had done years ago,
right.
Yeah, at the first one. They said they had this young gentleman named Timothée Chalamet, and I said, that one I know. And we had some kind of a dinner and talk, etc. We had a plan for I guess you call it a commercial. I don't know what it is.
It's like a little narrative. I feel that it's not evocative of other commercials and perfume commercials in a good way.
In a good way,
Yeah.
I think. It's somewhat different than that. And so it's a story in a way. But how to break it through. My latest film was over 3 hours. This, 60 seconds. And they said, Marty, it's only 60 seconds. The thing about 60 seconds is it's harder.
Condensed, and
every frame counts. Every frame. I know we're talking digital, but there's still frames in digital. But I mean, 1 frame more, 2 frames. That's the way we're editing this thing. Add 2 frames, take away a frame. Juxtaposition of images, all this sort of thing. So it's not a facile way of working. It's actually, I find these much more intense.
Yeah.
And they're real workouts.
More challenging in some way.
More challenging.
Yeah.
The narrative itself was about the film actor and being on the road, and one of the things we referred to was the great short film by Federico Fellini.
Toby Dammit.
Toby Dammit, yeah, and
Right.
I showed it to you, and I said, let's capture some of that feeling,
That's one of my favorite interactions with you. Is you said you've seen Toby Dammit, right? And I thought this Fellini, this obscure Fellini short. No, I haven't. But I quickly got onto it.
With that as an inspiration, we came up with a story somehow. It developed into a kind of story, and how that happened, I'm not quite sure.
No, but I'm so grateful that it developed. But I felt so honored that you brought because this didn't feel like a commercial, and I guess the fear as an actor. That's why I was so excited that you agreed to do it too. Is that you don't want it to feel whatever, like a product.
I know.
This was a total dream, total short film. What I walked away with the most, we haven't even gotten a chance to speak about it, but I was just so shocked about how unprecious you were about setups and how quickly we would fly. Not to say there wasn't enormous attention to detail. It was just so fascinating when filmmakers start out, and I've worked with a lot of young filmmakers that are enormously precious and maybe plotting sometimes. And here we were just like going,
Well, it was planned beforehand.
Yeah, to fly like that?
Well, not to fly like that, but I was glad it flew.
Yeah.
But no, the shots were designed. Or at least, I like to call it like a philosophy of a shot. Should this be a moving shot at all?
Right.
Or should it be static? And if it's static, what the hell size are you in the frame?
Right.
Is it from the waist up?
So that was all basically planned?
Yeah, I mean, then when you get into the, looking out the window and you see the
billboard?
The billboard, I know you're going to walk towards camera, but where do you stop?
But I didn't know there was a shot list, basically.
I have it myself.
Do you always work like that, basically, or no?
Well, back
on features.
Yes, back in when I started doing my first films, I would draw everything.
Wow, that sounds time intensive.
Yeah, well, it was by myself anyway. I was always by myself.
So
nobody wanted to be with me.
That's another story.
That's another. So I was always in a room by myself.
The taxi driver was literally there.
Literally across the street. I designed the whole picture and drew all the pictures right across the street at the St. Regis Hotel and out that window. I spent a lot of time doing that because, first of all, I liked the idea of how to tell a story with pictures, right? But it also, because it was so low budget, I had to really
have a plan
so that it could be changed.
Had you had an experience where you didn't have a plan? that informed that?
Yes, later on I tried
Okay.
another film, but I seem to work better with a plan. I really do.
It's like showing up memorized or showing up unmemorized.
Yes,
You probably
exactly.
don't deal with a lot of people that are unmemorized.
No, it's true, but even memorize is one thing. Knowing it's another, right?
Yeah.
As long as you know it.
Exactly.
As long as you know it.
Well
You
said.
know, you could start fooling around with stuff.
Yeah.
But I tried a different experiment once, and it didn't work for me. But over the years, the drawings became notes and little drawings in the margins of the script, or let's say in Goodfellas, actually it was put into the script.
How so, like shot lists?
Pretty
or
much.
that the actors would go off of in some way, or no? Is it
No,
relevant?
no. As long as I had actors who could, if I had a specific shot I wanted to get, which was complicated, as long as he or she would be able to behave unencumbered in the frame.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm asking them to look backwards and walk forwards at the same time, and I found that to be a problem. Mm-hmm. And then I may have adjusted the shot. You follow?
Right.
Depend on what's more important, their faces and what they're doing, or this particular move to the left or right.
But it's amazing in After Hours and Goodfellas, there's shots sometimes that push in rapidly on someone, and they're doing something very natural behaviorally. Obviously, De Niro's one of the greatest ever, but a camera's flying at him, and he's like
Yes,
picking
yeah.
his teeth or
Yes,
something. You know, he's
exactly.
not
Yeah,
disturbed.
yeah,
And that's why I was so seriously inspired working with you, is that it was so unprecious, and the commercial is quick. It's really gripping. Everyone I've showed it to, the 4 or 5 people, whatever, they go, "Oh my God, this is fast."
The thing is, the situation was perfect for that.
Yeah.
You know, if it was something else,
Yeah.
like if you see Killers of the Flower Moon,
Yeah.
as you saw, I mean, in certain cases, you just hold the camera, don't move
Right.
it. You know?
Now, I was shocked with Killers too. It's very engaging. I'm shocked only because of the runtime, but you're gripped the entire time. And
that was our big gamble.
it's amazing, pacing-wise, all those characters feel out of that era. Leo, most
I
of
know.
all, you know?
Well, I tell you, well, you know what it's like. You're in a
Yeah.
place like that, you learn to live in it,
Yeah,
and you become part of it.
yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it was a long shoot, but a lot of my pictures lately have been long.
Right.
That's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to change the style right away. I had to freshen up.
Right.
I had to
Right.
change it. Doesn't mean go faster. I had to think differently.
Right.
You know, to force myself to think differently.
No, I loved it. It was lean, it was muscular, and it was like way more running gun than I ever would have
Yeah.
thought.
I wanted to be free and open.
Yeah.
It was constructed, as I say, and
Yes.
designed.
Right.
But
Yeah, but there's room to play.
yeah,
That's what I loved. From my perspective, sometimes direction can be really explicit, and then when something's really explicit, it's quite hard to get to.
I can't
you know?
imagine how you do it.
Yeah, because you kind of lose your mind, you know. But and I felt you nudging, which is really the best, because if you're getting sort of gently, and then if you don't get there, I felt that too. If I was like, if it's not gonna work, fuck it, we're gonna go do something else.
Do something else.
Yeah.
Well, but you see, the nature of this spot lends itself to that because of the spontaneity of the show, let's say, or the backstage chaos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look, being specific and blocking specifically, it's another way of artistic expression.
Right.
You know, and there are times when I have to do it.
Right.
You know, but this particular story didn't need that.
Yes.
You know, I think we hit the pacing right. Getting in the van was hard when we hit you with the camera.
But that was used. That's what
Yeah.
I was laughing the first time I saw this podcast. I thought,
Yeah.
wow, this is again unprecious. It's like, well, this works. Great. We're gonna throw it in. Yeah.
The thing is that it really hit nicely. I mean, not the camera. It was like bang.
That makes
And
you
then-
think it was on purpose. No, okay.
And then suddenly you throw in the back of the car. You look up. And,
Yeah.
You know, it kind of indicates to the audience that what you're going to see for the next minute and a half, whatever it is something very different and special.
Yeah. I shot a movie in New York 7 years ago on the streets, whatever, and it was so wonderful to rap and then walk home. It feels more like a creative exercise, I guess.
Well, the city has and they always use the cliche of the energy, but it does have the energy.
Right.
It simply does, because everybody's on top of each other.
Right.
I mean, look at it. All the buildings on top of each other. It's different from LA. LA is spread out. You get the car. Back in 1971, when I learned to drive, I had to learn to drive out there. It was wonderful. It's made for cars.
Yeah.
You know, and you just turn the music up.
Your edge rots out there, though.
Yeah, it tended to, but luckily I was able to do films like Taxi Driver, and then
Right.
mainly because they saw Mean Streets and they wanted De Niro and myself together on that film.
But it was a different New York.
Oh, that was the New York of, Ford to City, Drop Dead. We shot it in the summer of '76. It was apparently the most
Violent? No.
well, violent, yes. But you see, for me, violence here is always the same. I grew up here. I'm always walking in the street a certain way, or I know not.
Yeah, he was checking your shoulder.
So the thing about it is, no, I just know I could see a person coming down that may not, because I grew up downtown in a rough
Lower
area,
Side, right?
in the Lower East Side when the Bowery was the Bowery, and it was
Right.
pretty scary growing up as a kid.
Right.
But what had happened was that the city was going to go bankrupt, and they asked from my long story short,
Yeah.
asked for federal
The
help.
Bronx is on fire, insurance schemes.
Yeah. It was buildings were collapsing. That
Right.
was that famous
Yeah.
building that collapsed that we put in vinyl. It was apparently the lowest ebb that the city has ever been in.
Was that
when we were
it was
shooting
a
Taxi Driver.
perfect cinematic background.
Yeah, but for me it was normal.
Right.
I was used to that.
Well, I grew up in Hell's Kitchen, and Hell's Kitchen's changed a lot from when I was growing up. Because when I was growing up, it was still a little bit on the edge in the Port Authority bus terminal. And the Port Authority's kept its edge by nature, I guess.
Yeah, it has.
But the rest of the neighborhood is much more dressed up. Yeah.
Come up a bit. But the Port Authority was, I used to use that a lot. I was living in New Jersey, actually, but in the mid-'60s, it was very cheap to live in Union City or Jersey
Right.
City. And coming in and out of that Port Authority bus terminal, what I saw in there
Yeah.
in the 60s, my God, it was horrifying.
Right.
The only places I think probably in Alphabet City still has a sense of the old tenements that I grew
Yeah.
up in.
That's what was weird working on this commercial too. Is it's not tropes, but so much of the iconicism of New York has stemmed from your work. So it's bizarre to all of a sudden be,
Well, the only
in
thing
it.
is like when you're down in the street in Soho, that you're walking along at the end. Of
Yeah.
When I was growing up, that street is where you went to steal hubcaps.
And now it's
And also other things.
Yeah.
So, not that I stole the
Yeah.
hubcaps, but I was with guys, kids. Now, it's like being in Provincetown, Connecticut. I guess I never was there, but
it's fancy as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love in Taxi Driver, having just watched it again too. I feel like you see so many things about moody or people on the edge. Watching it again, the opening shots are like super beautiful and serene, and the music's playing, and it's not lecturing. The movie's not lecturing you and telling you.
no,
it's
I
a-
just saw the city that way all the time. One of my favorite things in the city is the steam coming up out of the street. And so I had to have the car go through the steam.
that opening shot.
Yeah, I had to. And I was down on 22nd Street somewhere late at night. There was criticized at one point by certain snobby critics saying, and that's the level of the metaphor of the film, hell.
On
A
Earth.
cab is coming from hell. I said, no, that's New York. It's the
just is
steam
what
in the
it is.
streets. It is what it is. And when you see things come through that steam that way, you could think of, if you want, you could think of the Inferno, you could think of Paradise.
Right.
You don't know.
Right.
It's a beauty of the city late at night that way.
Yeah.
When you just pipes of smoke coming up all the way up 2nd
Yeah.
and 3rd Avenue. Oh, man.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful.
And the red lights, the tail lights of the cars. It was always raining, too, that summer.
But you guys got lucky.
It was always raining. And
It's
finally,
amazing.
we were waiting for the rain, and we started to go 2 or 3 days over schedule, and they were really mad at us. The studio was screaming. And I got in a lot of trouble because they were going to pull the plug on the picture. And so I said, we're shooting in the rain. So it's not going to match. We'll have to figure out how to, we better shoot fast then.
Yeah. Get it done.
I still go back to basics.
Right.
Normal lens, long lens, wide angle lens.
Right.
And then from there, you could go infinite.
Right.
And so movement or no movement of the frame or movement of the camera in the frame, because a pan is different from a track, right?
Right.
So I stay with those basics. And then if there are new things that could be implemented in there, and using focal length in a certain way, but I do find that after all these years, and with all the new technology, there are more choices, and it's kind of good in a way, except that more than 2/3 of those choices you don't need to make.
Right, because you end up wasting time or
It's
something?
wasting time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it always goes down to the basic as an actor and as a director. What do you want
Right,
to say?
right.
And what's in the way? Something's in the way. What the hell is it? Is it technology, or is somebody, in front of you and you're trying to do something and they're distracting you? It's that simple.
Right.
And now with
And there's few filmmakers that have a command of both, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to not get stuck into just the cutting edge.
Well, I think a lot of those filmmakers are recent in a way,
Right.
because they grew up with the technology. I did
Right.
not. It's another generation.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting what you guys do.
Well, that's why and I don't want to be cynical, and I don't want to take myself out of being a member of my generation as I have in the past. But I just think boredom is a good thing, and the way I was intensely bored growing up and had to read books, or if I could get my hands on a movie at my grandma's house, you cherish that movie. And with too much information, too much access, you know what I mean? You're not going to
Yeah. Well, it was a similar thing with you're talking about boredom, in a sense, because of In my case, when I was 3 years old in 1945, I contracted asthma, and my parents were working class. They didn't have books in the house and that sort of thing. They would just take me to the movies a lot, or let me eventually go by myself to the movies. And I had this little tiny area in the apartment before everybody came back from work.
Wow.
Then I started to learn how to read novels. And this priest was an interesting guy, Father Principe. He was the one who gave us Graham Greene and James Joyce. And that sort of when we were about 13 or 14.
Right.
And I started to read. That was a whole issue.
Right.
You know. But I think...
it was piecemeal in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, but what happens is that it's the old take the horse to water, you know, and if the horse drinks, you know, so that I had a couple of people who were doing that for me, and we were sustaining ourselves. We were continuing. We took advantage of those suggestions and guidance, and it wasn't always friendly. These were tough guys.
But they weren't telling you what to think or what was good. They were kind of giving you the keys in some way.
Giving you a basis of morality, too.
Right.
And somebody pointed out, said like in Killers of the Flower Moon, or a number of the films I made where the level of corruption is so deep because it's not, the society is not rooted in morality or any kind of spirituality. That's what human nature might be, that without that guidance or without that even dialogue between people about morality and spirituality, it becomes pure corruption.
Right.
I mean, if I, you know, in the movie, because the Native Americans don't understand the value of money, if I, you know, charge you $1 for this glass of water, they pay it, and then you realize they don't really understand paper money or anything like that. They're rich, but they don't know why, and they don't know what money is. So when they come in again, I'm going to say it's $10, and they pay it.
Right.
So I'm going to say next time $25. I'll keep $15. Meantime, we're friends. We take care of each other, and I'm just, you know, like, you know, you got the money anyway. I have to work for the money. You're not. I mean, but that's an interesting moral issue. If it's only $1, charge $1. And so that's the interesting thing about how we could become complicit in absolutely genocide.
Yeah, and a genocide not told about, really.
No,
I wasn't educated on it. But the movie's still very spiritual, though. Like almost all your films.
I think it is.
There's a spiritual core to it.
It's interesting how corruption just infiltrates every aspect of your life, and you could learn to live with it because you don't react against it. You don't speak up.
That's what's so great about the Leo character in it. You know, without giving anything away, this guy's a complicated figure, to say the least. But it's handled so delicately. You don't feel that you're taking him, you know, you're not instructing the viewer how to feel either way.
No, not at all. Not at all. Like in the case of Wolf of Wall Street, for example, I only learned the other day from an interviewer who said, "You're not aware of the war of Wolf of Wall Street?" So I said, "What are you talking about?" So, well, there was a big screening at Paramount of the picture. And for the critics in New York, apparently, I was told this, there were two camps. One camp that loved the picture, and the other camp that was furious, saying, I didn't take a moral stand on Jordan Belfort. And one of the critics from the other group that liked the picture said, do you really need Martin Scorsese to tell you that that's wrong?
Right. Yeah, it's well said. That's well said. Yeah, it's well said.
You really need him to tell you that's wrong?
Well said.
He knows it's wrong.
Does that moralistic attitude bore you a little bit now, or no?
Well, it's beyond boring, I think. You know, it's always been around. I mean...
well, because America's a Puritan country.
Well, it says it is.
Right. Well, that's what's confusing to me as a young person is
but there's a difference. There's a difference between religion and spirituality.
Okay.
And religion could taken the wrong way, could become something that is restricting and becomes intolerable and becomes judgmental.
Judgmental, key word there, yeah.
Yeah. So you have a big problem. Good example is Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
They're all Europeans who were Protestants.
Right.
You know, I'm not condemning Protestants. I'm just saying that was the
moral code.
They had a morality. But, you know, when a guy like Bill Hale, played by De Niro, who says, I love these Osage people, and he's killing them, but he does love them. Now, what is that?
It's fantastic because you don't feel there's no music cue that says this guy's evil. You know,
it's he's just going to do what he's going to do. But that's the thing I think ultimately about concentration for younger people and taking the time not just to make a movie to become famous. That's good too if you can.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately if you have something to say, if you're really burning,
and not just the party line.
Yes, exactly. because
the most important things are things that are new and fresh, point a way forward, point you to how people are feeling. Yeah. It's harder to know now. There's there's less mainstreaming of things now. I think things are a little more.
I was going to say the other night we were at this big event. People were talking about that the news is different now and this and that. I said, look, back when I was growing up, there was CBS, NBC, ABC. It's gone.
Right.
I said, in effect, the mainstream is going.
Does that shock you, having been so representative of your generation, to feel now like, what the hell am I looking at, kind of thing, or no? But you're so young at spirit. I mean that. I'm not just saying that to blow smoke.
Thank you. No, that's nice. Yeah. But I like keeping that youth, and I like keeping an open mind. But an open mind means less restrictions, and these days, for good reason and for good intent, there's a great deal of a closing of the mind.
Right. Killers walks that line incredibly because it tells the story of a moral injustice, more than a moral injustice, a human injustice, but you still have characters that are wonderfully complicated. And that's hard to achieve.
Well, because there isn't it isn't as simple as suddenly you go into a world that's all morally unjust and everybody's very serious and they're all villains. Right. No, it's the guy next to you. It's you, even. Catholicism was confession. You have examination of conscience. Or in Maoist, it was Maoist self-criticism. You know what I mean?
Right.
But not to be afraid to criticize yourself.
Right.
And don't become cowed by what other people think.
Right.
And what they want you to think, I should say.
Right. Do you feel like the story around your life and your work, impacted the kind of movies you were making?
I don't know. The story of my life was, I guess, wound up in the movies. In the mid-'70s, that was a little rough period. Pretty rough period till about 78. 76, 78 were pretty tough. And came out of it at the end of 78. I just embraced myself from where I came from and did this film that De Niro really wanted me to make over the years, but I had resisted. And that was Raging Bull.
I think I read that you hadn't wanted to do it at first.
Well, for many different reasons. He saw it sooner than I did. He knew it was me. He knew it was in me, the Jake LaMotta character that we were making. And so then I felt comfortable. And I realized, I know
you didn't see it at first?
No, I was blind.
Because you thought you didn't relate to it, or?
It was, first of all, we hadn't really consolidated the script. And my friend Martin
it's a huge story.
Yeah. And
the last 30 minutes are a different movie in an amazing way. Yeah.
But there were different things. The relationship with De Niro was changing too.
Because of his stardom?
And other things. Do you want to work again with him? You know what I'm saying? I had to really think about that. Yeah.
Well, some of the best collaborations happen with,
Yeah. But we went through that period and we came out the other side and it was Raging Bull.
Right, there you go.
So then we did it again in King Comedy. Then I wanted to go off into Last Temptation of Christ, to other films that I wanted, Gangs of New York, things like that. And ultimately, when I say embraced where I came from, Raging Bull, was... it's the 70s, and where I came from, people were still alive. My parents were still living down in the tenements. A lot of the stories I was putting in my movies had elements of truth in them. A lot of people down there were still alive, names you couldn't mention.
So, yes, there's a sensitivity around these.
Yeah. So I was in L.A. I had long hair, I had cowboy clothes. I loved.
I saw a picture of you at the Cannes Film Festival recently, and it's not the Marty I met.
Yeah. So no, what happened? I had to grow the beard because I looked so young. Everybody was laughing.
Okay.
They thought it was 12 years. I said, no, okay. So I grew a beard. But what I'm getting at is that I couldn't really talk too much or embrace too much my background. But by the time I did Raging Bull, I said, the hell with it.
Right.
And I went back, and my mother and father were in the film, and we shot it downtown.
Because you started using your mom. She's in it. Yeah. Was it simply a respectful fear, or more than that?
It was a caution.
It was a caution.
Yes. No, a lot of people were still alive. And it was before the Little Italy became the Little Italy that it is now.
Right.
It was a closed society.
Right.
No names mentioned, ever.
Right. It's nice when you come back to the director. There's a dialogue, there's a rapport. Also on the acting side, you feel like, this person really likes me because I'm back again. I'm back. Yeah, exactly.
He didn't throw me out.
Yeah, exactly. And it gives you confidence. But you've done that, legendarily with De Niro and DiCaprio.
Yeah.
And we'll do Chanel commercials every 3 years.
Yes, exactly. No, but with them, though, it's just a different thing because De Niro knew me from Lower East Side when we were 16 years old. So he knew the people I grew up with.
Right.
Still does. So a few of them left. He was with another group up on Kenmare Street. We were on Prince and Houston.
Okay.
Prince and Houston Street, Elizabeth, Mulberry. Every now and then we met in these after-hour bars late at night, respectful and always very, very nice to each other. Some of the guys he was with we didn't like. I mean, I'm talking about
Yeah.
myself and a couple of my friends. We said,
Right.
oh, these, stay
These
away.
guys.
Stay away.
Was he already acting?
I couldn't tell. I don't think so.
Right.
I lost track of him is what happened.
Right.
And because Brian De Palma had been working with De Niro in High Mom.
Wow.
And so they said, you got to meet him. And after the dinner was over, we were sitting in another room. And he looked at me and he says, you used to hang out with Curdy, right? And Joe Morale. And you're with, remember Albie Eyes? I said, yeah. He said, I'm Bobby. I said, Bobby? You mean Bobby from Camille? He says, yeah.
Wow.
I said, I didn't realize. And that's how we came back
That's how
together.
we linked. My God. And now you live 5 blocks from each other or whatever.
I don't know. He seems to be around the corner.
Yeah, you see him all
I
the
can't
time.
tell. In between roles, he looks anonymous. I have no idea who he is.
Right.
He could be right next to me.
He's at B&B Bagels on the line behind you or something.
Yeah, you don't know what's
Yeah.
going on. I mean, one night we had dinner with Michael Powell, the great British director.
Mm-hmm.
We were preparing for Raging Bull, and he wanted to ask him questions about gaining weight. There's a sequence that Powell does in his film Colonel Blimp. I said, well, we'll meet Bob tonight at dinner. And it was an apartment I had on 57th Street. And we're up there eating, and Bob's next to him, and everything's fine. And after the main course, before dessert, he said, I understand De Niro will be coming tonight. I said, he's right next to you.
Oh my God, he hadn't realized the whole time?
Because he's very quiet and he's
Sort of
anonymous.
You feel it in his work. You feel someone that's not vain, basically.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Because, hey, listen, if the shot plays best on my back and on somebody else's face, play it.
Right.
Whereas other actors, they need eye light.
Right.
They need to look
Right.
a certain way.
Not talking about me, by the way. No.
He didn't need the eye light.
He didn't need any. And with Leo,
Leo, just interesting, a 30-year difference, but he has similar sensibility and a curiosity. Curiosity is the key thing. You know.
man, is it ever. That's the biggest thing. And there's a Bob Dylan quote from Chronicles, his book. I might butcher it a little bit, but he says, if your ability to inspire, be curious, or observed is compromised in any way, then your creativity is compromised.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the danger of today, too.
Yeah. Because what, there's an answer to everything?
Yeah, an answer, and there's understandably a sensitivity, you know, which has to be balanced with art somehow, because the art should be free.
I just read for Taxi Driver that there was some, like, all the directors had come up with some rule or something. I'm going to butcher this too, but not to be moralistic, to not put violence in movies or something.
Right. Yeah, I still got that. I got that. Oh my God, I was shunned for Goodfellas.
Now, why
I was shunned in certain Italian restaurants that wouldn't let me in.
Would you feel like over the years that perception changed?
No, I mean, look, violence is in ancient Greeks. Violence usually took place off stage, and it was described. It was just, it was off stage. A messenger comes in and says, "You should see what happened.
Right.
You should see what they did to you know."
Right.
Peleus, he was up there, and they tore him apart in the Bacchae. Oh my God, you know.
Also helps the fight budget and the stunt budget.
Yeah. But it was just as scary and just as disturbing, highly stylized. I guess I've had this kind of question about violence going all the way back to Mean Streets, you know. But I grew up in a place that was, you know, violence was a form of expression.
Right. And communication.
Yeah, and it was serious. There was a difference between a friendly slap and a slap. And that was up to you to determine. You could see that in Goodfellas when he says, "Do you think I'm funny?"
Was that scripted?
No.
Yeah, that wasn't scripted.
No, something happened to Joe in his life. And he
Scary,
told me,
man.
and he said he got himself out of it. He got him by saying,
so he was on the
"You're
opposite
fucking
side of
with
that
me." He says,
situation.
"Yeah, you're
Oh,
screwing with
God.
me.
Oh,
You're screwing with
God.
me." The guy said, "I had you there, you bastard.
Oh,
I had
God.
you," you know? And I said, that's the story. It wasn't even the script, we put it in.
That reminds me when I was in middle school on 108th in Amsterdam, and I saw one of my good friends, Jordan, the week before. Someone said to him, he got in basically a tussle, an argument with a guy, and he said to the guy, "Oh, you're so tough, punch me in the face." And he leaned in. And the other guy was terrified, and he backed down. So, you know, a week later, I was getting hassled by some kids, and I leaned into the guy and said, "You're so tough, punch me in the face." And I got punched. One of the few times in my life I got punched so bad.
That really hurts.
Yeah. That really, it was one of the few times in my life I got really rocked in the face. It's a good lesson, though.
Yeah, no, I found, luckily I had the asthma because they would leave me
Protected
alone.
you.
They're some of the toughest guys. They would fool you around and get mad at you and then say, "Oh, it's all right, the kid's sick." And they would take, "Yeah, come here." And they would take care of me. Oh, I love in the spot when you say, "Well, I'd be kinder to myself." And
Wait, I haven't seen. I don't remember that. This
it's
must
in
be
there
the new
now.
version.
Yeah, we put that in.
Anyway, thank you. Thanks for letting me chat like this.
Oh,
And,
thanks.
you
It was,
know, and,
Can we settle? We're just getting the last lines right here, and we're ending.
Hey, you guys settled or what? It can't be that bad.
Are you guys just trying to get
He's good looking. What are you talking about?
Is that one on
He's
me
a
or
big
no?
deal, this kid.
Sorry, guys.
We take 2. Let's see how sincere this is. Thanks again for chatting about your
Well,
work.
thank you,
Yeah.
Timothy, and I guess I'll see you later, right?
I'll see you tonight.
Okay,
We'll celebrate this.
terrific.